And once again, it's Dr. D tonight, bringing to you one of my talks. And before we get into the talk tonight, let us simply take a deep breath. We're living in a chaotic world. We're living in, some of us, chaotic homes. We need to be able to see ourselves differently. Let me say this to you before we stop and do a little breathing meditation. And that is this: love is letting go of fear. Love is letting go of fear. Tonight I'm going to be talking to you about the ABDs of spiritual growth. Let's take a deep breath through our nose. Hold it. And exhale through our mouth. Let's do this 3 times. Breathe in through our nose. Hold it. Exhale. One more time. Let's breathe in through our nose. Hold it. Exhale. Let's do a little aerobics for a minute. Let's just shake off whatever's bothering us. Love's presence is your natural inheritance. The very presence of love in our life is the natural state that we are to live in. Somewhere along the line of what we call evolution, we've actually developed a perception, an awareness, and a sense of identity that is clouded and distorted. Clearing misconceptions and the profound sense of separation, in a sense, is why we feel separate, alone, afraid, and why we are suffering from a case of mistaken identity. You know, growing up, quite often I would hear that phrase, putting the fear of God into you. What is the fear of God? I'm going to share with you tonight the things that I do in my life to maintain spiritual awareness. You are never going to be any more spiritual than you are at this moment, because you are spirit. Spirit is not something that you do, it's someone that you are. People are always saying to me, well, I want to be spiritual, I want to be spiritual. Well, that's like me saying, I want to be white, I want to be white. I am white. Or an African American person saying, oh, I want to be African American. They are African American. When we are who we are, there is no confrontation. There is simple clarity. The ABDs of spiritual growth. if I stick to the King James, the Christian narrative, well, maybe I need to clear this up first. I don't consider myself to be a Christian. I consider myself to be a believer. I believe that God, Creator, Source, whatever name we are comfortable ascribing to this power that is greater than us, that we're connected to, can absolutely do anything. I believe that forgiveness is the key to happiness. Here is the answer for your search for peace. Simply, when something happens, if you could stop and say, if I could see peace instead of this. Peace of mind is clearly an internal matter, and it must begin with your own thoughts and then extend outwards. I often hear people say, well, if this would happen, I would be more peaceful, or if that would happen, I would be more peaceful. If my car would start, I would be more peaceful. If I had a better job, I'd be more peaceful. Da 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 da. Those are all external things. Peace has to begin with our own thoughts and then extend out of us. The world you see on the outside picture is a picture of our inward condition. In other words, projection makes perception. We seek not to change the world, but we choose to change our mind about the world. Now, how do we go about that? Well, let me back up into the Genesis for all of you Christian folk that have already written me off tonight. Do you realize that before it was ever mentioned about what y'all call the original sin, that it talked about things that God made prior to that, and it said, and it was good, and it was good, and it was good, and it was good. There's so much goodness that filled the world before a person erred. And yet we let one error eons ago put us in a prison and begin to see ourselves as having to have spirituality rather than be a spiritual being that we are. So, what do? The ABDs. Well, first of all, I understand that I am made in the very image and the very likeness of this Godness. Does God have a penis? I don't think so. Does God have a vagina or breast? I don't think so. Is God male? Is God female? I don't think so. If I read your Christian Bible, it says God is not a man that he should lie, although it uses he a lot. God is spirit, and that spirit is the essence of love, which is our natural inheritance. we are made in the likeness of love. Period. I don't care how you're acting, if you're fussing on stuff. The truth is still that you're made in the likeness of that love, and you have a case of mistaken identity. You're a fraud acting like something that you're not. So the ABDs. A. Atonement. I recognize every single day, when I err. And when I err, I stop and I go back to that forgiveness where it says forgiveness is the key to happiness. I go back to that forgiveness and I begin to respond with unconditional love. Unconditional love. I stop and I forgive myself for the shame, for the guilt. And then I begin to look at my actions, still in the A, and I begin to atone for those actions. Now, if I have hurt somebody with my words, my deeds, if I've stolen, I will atone by returning what I've stolen even 100-fold to them, and then atone to myself to bring me back in right relationship. And A, awareness. Awareness is the key, the main key to your spiritual growth. Not you being more spiritual. Remember, you're as spiritual as you're ever going to be in this moment, but the spiritual growth, the spiritual exercises. You know, you go to the gym and you start with a few little weights where you have the weights in your hand, and you're still going to have the body that you have, but you're going to build that body that you already have by using the correct form, using the correct weight to bring tension, to build that muscle. We must build our attitudinal muscle. Attitudinal muscle. When we become aware of our surroundings, when we become aware of who we really are, when we become aware that you and your neighbor are the same, there's no distance between the two of you. When you become aware that the right way to live is with social justice, the way that you become aware, that rather than hoard and a lot of stuff like we do here in America, that you begin to give so that lives are changed and people have a chance to grow. So what about B? Most of us have heard of the Sermon on the Mount, and we call it the Beatitudes. The Beatitudes. I just mentioned attitudinal adjustment. I want to read the chapter 5 of Matthew. And it simply says, when Jesus saw his ministry drawing huge crowds, he climbed a hillside. Those who were apprenticed to him, the committed, climbed with him. Arriving at a quiet place, he sat down and taught his climbing companion. This is what he said. You're blessed when you're at the end of your rope. With less of you, there is more of God and His rule. Blessed when you feel you're lost and what is most dear to you. Only then can you embrace the one most dear to you. You're blessed or you're happy, beatitude, when you're content with just who you are. No more, no less. That's the moment you find yourselves proud owners of everything that can't be bought. You're blessed when you've worked up a good appetite for God. His food and drink is the best meal you'll ever eat. You're blessed when you care. At the moment of being careful, you find yourselves cared for. You're blessed when you get your inside world, your mind and your heart put right. Then you can see God on the outside world. A change of vision, a change in perspective. I've seen physical miracles happen in people's lives, but what I want to talk today about a miracle in this respect is a miracle is a shift in perception. A miracle is a shift in perception. When you begin to realize who you are, the awareness that you're made in the very image and the likeness of Creator of God. Your very DNA becomes important to you. Your shoulders go back. You raise up. You begin to see your family tree. I often say this, that Jesus is my elder brother. And Jesus is one that I look to for inspiration because He has gone before me. But also, I look to the Buddha for wisdom. I look to the Krishna. I look to the various spiritual practices so that I may grow and develop and be strong in who I am. So the D, discipline. Discipline. You can't curse and bless at the same time. Either you're going to curse or you're going to bless. You can choose to have the discipline to begin to practice spiritual practices. Not commandments, but practices that bring out that God self of who you are. So that when people see you, they see Creator, they see light, they see love. So that when you walk into a room without saying a single word, that your very essence and your very presence changes people's lives. Discipline, discipleship, discipline. What does that entail? You set your own discipline. My discipline begins at 5 in the morning. I start my day at 5 in the morning with my spiritual practice of gratitude, with prayer for those that have come to me that have requested special prayers, with a time of singing, of Alleluia or or a chant that I'm doing. Part of my spiritual practice is that I stop 5 times a day, and I stop and I take an inventory of where I'm at. And if something is a little bit off, in that moment I go back to the A and I atone. I remember very clearly, it wasn't that long ago, I was in the grocery store early in the morning, and I was hurrying and harried, and the lady in front of me, she was just she was taking too much time. And I wanted to say, if I wanted to have patience, I would have been a doctor, okay? But I was very curt with her. So later on in that morning, when I stopped to do my spiritual practice, and I simply said, God, create in me a clean heart, renew a right spirit within me. Did one of the cleansing breaths that I teach you to do. The thought pops into my mind. Remember when you were separate from that lady today, this morning? Because you see, separation is an illusion. Remember that. Remember the attitudinal muscle that you need to have worked on. Going back to the forgiveness. Forgiving myself for that moment. Asking God, who is spirit, to reach back into that moment of time and fill that woman with such love. Such love, that's all she could have felt from me. When we realize we're spiritual beings, it is possible to undo. It is possible for spirit to reach back in time and heal old wounds. We get so caught up in the basic 5 senses that we forget that there are more spheres and more consciousness out there than just the 5 senses. So on the D, dream. 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 Have a dream. What is your dream? Make sure your dream is for the good of all. Make sure your dream isn't a selfish dream. Make sure your dream is to share the gift that you have come to the planet for. Maybe it's a painter, a sculptor, a singer, a dancer. Maybe it's a bookkeeper. Maybe it's who knows what it is. Your dream, and dream big. I dream big. I set an intention for dreams that I have, and then I don't be attached to the outcome. And in doing so, I stop and I say, I am open and I'm willing to see this differently. And I begin to do the steps that I do, the forgiveness, the atonement, the alignment, every single day. Doesn't matter whether I feel like it or don't feel like it. And here comes the demonstration. I demonstrate who I am. I make no excuses for who I am. For you see, my friend and teacher Marianne Williamson, she said, it's not our darkness that scares us. It is our light. Because you and we are more powerful beyond measure. So I renamed the YouTube channel the ABDs of spiritual growth. And on this channel, we'll be talking about ways to increase who you already are. Ways to nurture who you are. It doesn't matter what other people do. It doesn't matter that the haters could be out there. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you show up as pure love. Now that doesn't mean romance, honey sweet kind of thing. That sometimes you have to speak love and it can be tough. But you speak it without any malice or any hatred. Forgiveness that we've talked about, and it being the key to happiness. Forgiveness doesn't mean when somebody wrongs you that you put your arms around them and say, oh, I forgive you, everything's hunky-dory, and then they're your bestie again, and you go to lunch and go to dinner. No. Forgiveness means that you let it go and they no longer have power over you, and you don't hold a resentment or a bitterness towards them. You don't ever have to go to lunch with them again. You don't ever have to see them again. But if you forgive them, don't you? Now, where'd you get that at? I forgive you, I bless you, and I let you go on your way. You think if you stole money from me, that I want to say, I forgive you and I want to have you around me again to steal more money? No. I can forgive you and I can let it go, bless you, send you on your way, and not see you anymore. You think if I'm in a love relationship with you and you've hurt my heart, that I can just say, oh, huggy, huggy, kissy, kissy, kissy? No, that's not what it's about. It's saying I hold no malice. I atone for my part in this. I choose to respond with unconditional love and set me free, thus setting you free. And my friends, it all comes to choice. Yes, life can be painful, but suffering is optional. People can cause pain in our life, but suffering is optional. People can mistreat us and talk behind our back and gossip and carry on, and it be painful to our egos and ourselves. Yes, but suffering is optional. My wish for you is that you don't live in fear. Do not live in fear. Because love, once again, is letting go of fear. And I'm closing with the thought from A Course in Miracles tonight, which I live by, and which is one of my spiritual growth principles that I walk in. And it simply says this: if you knew who walked beside you every day on the path that you have chosen. Yes, even when I've chosen the grimy paths, even when I've chosen to be in the gutter, even when I've made poor choices. If you knew who walked beside you, you would never doubt and never fear again. So what if you made poor choices? In this moment in time, over your head, let's just see a little ball of golden light coming down to the top of your head. Let's envision in our mind's eye that little ball of golden light coming down into our heart chakra. Let's envision the fear that has gripped our heart. Turning into a miracle of love. A miracle of forgiveness. And so it is. Until next time. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to others. Because kindness is the language the deaf can hear. And it really is the language that the blind can see.